hit the blue button. I just hit the blue button, which means hopefully because I've hit the blue button, you're here hanging out with us because you're super cool. And we want to hang out with the coolest people on the face of the earth. That's why we're here to hang out with you. Thanks for being here. I hope you're having a great week. It is Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and that's where we are pretty much every single week of the year because that's where we want to be. So thanks for being here. It's awesome to have you here. We actually have a topic in store.
Yay!
We were talking about potential trends for 2023, and this is just our opinion. It's not like I went out and I talked to a million different people who are like the industry leaders of the world. I said, what's the trends? But this is what we've been seeing, both from a content creation perspective and fish sales and talking with people and going to pet stores and stuff. And so I think this is what we can expect for 2023 in the next 12 months. So that's what's happening. Hold on, I got something in my eye because I don't know why. Because it's the start of a live stream and I don't know. That's just what happens sometimes, I suppose. So I hope you brought your questions because we will be answering questions today too, tonight, as soon as we get done talking about our thing. As always, stuff that's been going on lately in the land of videos. Last Sunday, I did the X-ray tetra species profile. Love that fish. You should check it out if you haven't done so because it's cool. The tank that these fish were in were awesome. It was a very, very nicely aquascape tank from Aquashella last year. Probably my favorite tank. I don't remember. Was that Dallas or was it Florida?
I don't know.
They all mixed together in my
brain. They
really
do.
I can't distinguish them anymore. But anyway, it's a cool tank. Today, Wednesday, on the Small Scape, your channel. What'd you do?
You didn't even watch it yet. You don't even know what I did.
That is all true. I cannot tell a lie.
Well, I was talking about 5 must-haves for my aquascapes going forward starting in 2023. So it's very on point tonight's.
Oh, all right.
Because we're all talking about 2023 and beyond.
Sweet. I think we should just talk about 2017. I think we're going to change it up today.
Bring it back.
Can anybody even remember 2017? Like what you did in 2017? Any like really cool things? That was only 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I'd have to look at my pictures.
I can't even remember half the time. I can't even remember the video we did last Sunday, and someone's piping like, "You did this video." Ah, yes, thank you very much. So going back 5 years, good luck with that. So that was that. Tomorrow we'll have the members video. We'll be down in the fish room talking about some stuff going on. And then Sunday, I've got a video I'm very excited about. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I'm definitely going to want your feedback. I'm going to want to hear your opinions on it because, again, it's just a video with my opinion. And sometimes people, they don't agree. And maybe this will be one of those videos. So I can't wait to hear your opinions on it. It'll be fun, though. Where we're going to be, we've got a busy rest of the month coming up here. So this Sunday, the 15th, we are going to be at the GCCA, Greater Chicago Cichlid Association swap. So if you are in the area, Midwest, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, surrounding states, might want to check it out. It's a pretty darn good swap. So we're going to be there. By the way, thank you. Thank you to everybody who has placed orders for fish. We're going to be extremely busy. We're very happy about that. We brought in all kinds of cool stuff. We've got a lot of cool things. We have rainbow fish and all kinds of different rasboras and cory cats, and we've got all the different types of cichlids that we breed. So definitely excited for that. So hopefully stop by, say hello. And then if you can't be at the GCCA on Sunday, the following Saturday on the 21st, we've got the Greenwater Aquarius Society swap. And so we'll be down in Tinley Park next Saturday. So looking forward to that on the 21st. So that's kind of where we're going to be. So that's the thing. Would you like to add anything to the beginnings?
No, except John Wood had an interesting question. That's a really quick answer. He asked if Mome settling on like Anubias or like rhizomes, like in crevices, if you have it in crevices, crevasses, if it can cause like root rot and stuff, heck yeah, it can. Anubias does not really like a whole lot of stuff gathering on its rhizome.
It doesn't like to
and
be dirty.
It doesn't really like to be all dirty. So yes, it would start to deteriorate.
Well, that's not cool.
No.
Notice here, Andy said Quad City Swap was crazy busy. I heard, and I'm glad to hear that because we are going to be at our first ever Quad Cities Swap, which I'm really looking forward to. Out in, Andy, is that in Dubuque? I don't even remember. I think it is, right across the river over there and through the woods. But yeah, we plan to be there at the one in February. The one in February is, and I don't remember. It's at the end of February. I can't remember if it's the 19th or the 26th. I think it's the 19th, but we are definitely going to be there, so really looking forward to that one. We'll talk more about that later as we get closer, but we're there, man. Davenport, thank you, Andy. Davenport. I knew it started with a D. Davenport, Dubuque, whatever. Davenport, yeah. So looking forward to that. That's going to be cool. So trends for 2023. We might as well just get right into it. But before we do, want to thank all our moderators for being here. Whip, Dave from Iowa, I see Lynn, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, as always.
Okay, so what's going on in 2023? Well, you should know because it already started. We can just skip this conversation and move on. No. So a few things, and some of this is, I think it's something to kind of look out for, and part of it is, where is the economy going in 2023? And if you read all the experts and all the sudden onslaught of layoffs and things like that, we're seeing that there could be an economic downturn. And so with that in the back of my mind, I'm kind of keeping that in the back of my mind as we talk about the trends for 2023. But the first thing I think is probably going to happen is I think online retailers are going to see a lot more business. Online fish retailers, that is. And I would love to hear your opinion in the comments section in the chat. It just seems like people are becoming more and more comfortable buying fish online and having them shipped to their house. I can tell you from a personal perspective, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, would I have fish shipped to my house? I'd be like, no, I'm not taking the chance, and what's going to happen? But it's just come so far, so fast that even in the last 5 years, so many online retailers have really figured out how to get healthy fish to your door pretty much 12 months out of the year. Yeah, there are some extremes. If it's going to be really, really super cold or extremely hot in a region of the United States, maybe you got to wait a week or two just to kind of let things settle out a little bit. But I do feel like online fish stores and online fish retailers are going to do probably better in 2023 than they ever have. And the reason for that is when you start looking for fish, right? And it's just a downside when you go to your local fish store. If they don't have what you want, well, then what do? You start searching online. You realize, oh my gosh, there's like 15 online retailers that have exactly what I want. And fish keeping has changed a lot since the advent of online fish shipping, because you used to go to the pet store and they would dictate pretty much what you were going to get. Yes, sometimes you could special order fish from them, but for the most part, you'd walk into the stores that were around you, and if they had something that you were interested in, you bought it. Maybe you were half interested in it, but it's a new fish and it would be cool, so you bought that instead. But it could be tough to go to a pet store and be like, okay, I want these 3 very specific fish, and be 100% assured that they were going to be there when you got there. Where online now, you can just type in, okay, I want some rummy nose rasboras. Who's got them? And boom, all of a sudden you've got 5 places that have them, and you start looking through the reviews and say, okay, who's going to be the most reliable? The other thing I think is online retailers have figured out the shipping in terms of, hey, it costs a little bit more, but it's much better just to do next day, right? And in the long run, it's going to save the buyer a whole lot of issues. And yeah, to overcome that shipping, you have to kind of plan out your fish purchase. Maybe it's going to be more worthwhile to do that when you're going to be buying more fish. But I think buyers are figuring that out too. So that's my number one thing. Anything you'd like to say about that?
No, I have no comment to that.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add for trends you feel? Because I just said, hey, we're going to do this thing, but we didn't really talk about it.
No, I would have my own opinions, what I see. But I come from the aquascaping side.
Okay.
I personally see more in scapes outside of the tank, which is totally my jam. Just very unusual, unique, as opposed to the either you're just a kind of a leisurely scaper or a serious scaper. There's just a whole lot more variety now, and a lot of like minimal. I'm big in minimal. I mean, even like for the house, I'm going minimal. If you've noticed, I'm trying to get rid of stuff, have less, because brains just work better. And then of course during recessions you have less. So if you have, you know, less and you just make it look like more, because even a very minimal scape can be extremely striking. So that's what I'm seeing.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be all complicated. You don't have to get 5 or 6 or 7 different kinds of plants.
Yeah, and I guess on that theme, that was one of the things I was going to talk about, trends for 2023. It's interesting how, especially in the last couple of years, planted tanks have really become popular. And this is something that we see through our YouTube analytics. It's something that we see through the videos that we produce. It's something that we see in the swaps that we attend, the fish auctions that we attend. It's something that we see going to all the fish shows that we've been to over the last few years especially. And that trend has only grown over the last few years. And I expect that to be very strong in 2023 because it's exciting. It's exciting for people who, it just seems like the timeline between when somebody starts the hobby, when somebody figures out the basics and wants to do something more and treat their tank like an ecosystem, that timeline has shrunk quite a bit. And I think part of it is you see all the stuff on the internet, and whether it's YouTube or Instagram or whatever, TikTok, and you just see these really cool things like, wow, maybe I can create this. And it in some ways seems kind of easy, and in some ways it is. And I think we're going to see more of that. And with that, when you're going to have planted tanks and maybe even smaller tanks, and I'm not necessarily saying 5, 8 gallons or like these that we have back here, but when you're doing planted tanks, you have to have fish that are plant safe. And I also see, we have seen a lot over the last couple of years, especially this transition when it comes to fish. And I would love to hear from you. If you think this is going to be a thing, if it's something that you're noticing or that you're even into. If you were to ask me what fish sold the best when we did swaps, what videos did the best 5 years ago on YouTube or even 4 years ago, it would have been cichlids, right? The shell dwellers, the African cichlids, the mbuna, the peacocks, it was just really, really popular. But over the last few years, and especially the last couple years, we've seen this shift, at least from our perspective, a lot more planted, a lot more nano. People get really excited about the small rasboras, the smaller tetras, these kind of unusual fish. And by the way, I think that's what ties into point number one. And point number one being that online presence of fish retailers are often the ones that can supply the fish, these more unusual fish than maybe some of the pet stores. Sometimes pet stores are a little bit slow to catch on, where the online retailers have a little bit more freedom to try things, bring some things in, and then they get a bigger picture of what's going on throughout the country because they can ship anywhere. Where your local fish store is primarily concerned about their one little area and the community that they serve, where the online retailer can pick up on those trends much faster because they've got a more, I don't want to say global perspective, but certainly country perspective. So yeah, I think that's going to be a thing for sure. So thing number 2, and this is something I think we've both seen. Well, I guess it's thing number 3 because you messed up my things that I wanted to talk about. She gets me out of order, messes up my whole situation.
You're welcome.
The other thing that we're seeing a lot, and that is, and we kind of just mentioned it, more and more people are utilizing the swaps and the auctions that fish clubs put on. Right? I'm not saying that's a thing that's just blowing up all over the country, but for those areas, especially the areas that have a higher population density, we're seeing a lot more swaps come online and a lot more just aquarium shows, right? To the point where I almost wonder if it's going to get saturated, right? At what point do we realize, holy cow, like, all right, so for instance, in our area, in the Chicagoland area, for the longest time, the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association was the main swap. And it was pretty much the one that everybody knew about. Greenwater Aquarium Society had theirs that they would do periodically. And then there might have been a couple smaller swaps that weren't all that close to the area. But over time, what's happened is you've got GCCA, you've got Greenwater, there is one in Aurora now. This is the western suburbs by us. There is, you've got Quad Cities, you've got Milwaukee. Some of these, again, they've been around for a while, but what's happening is I think especially now since people are more willing to go outside, the attendance levels are really picking up. And we're seeing that in pretty much all of the fish swaps that we go to. A lot more people are coming. They're just more aware. And I think they're more aware because, again, you've got the online presence. You've got people talking about them. They're starting to search for them, right? I mean, how many of you over the last couple, if you would have gone back a couple of years ago, I'm like, I have no idea. What is a fish swap? Is that do you just trade fish or what do you do? And a lot of people still have that question, but they're starting to realize, wow, you know what? I can go to these fish swaps and I can buy fish from people who have bred the fish and they're really, really healthy, or they brought them in like we do. We some of the fish we breed, some of them we bring in, but when we do that, we quarantine them for 4 weeks. What pet store is doing that out there? And so that really reduces the likelihood that you're going to get sick fish. And oh, by the way, the fish are usually a much better deal at a swap than they're going to be at pretty much anywhere else. And so people are starting to search these things out. And I've actually heard lately that, oh, you know what, they just started a swap in this area, or they just started a swap in some other region that didn't have one for the longest time. And I think that's pretty cool. I do. What do you think?
Oh, sign me up for swaps. Plants, great place to get plants.
Yep.
And I think, because we do get a lot of questions, well, there aren't any swaps in my area. What do I do? But I think they're just more and more popping up because it's great for the community, and I think there's just more people getting into the hobby, and it's just awesome.
And it's not only that, it's like from our perspective, when we do the swaps, especially the GCCA, we've got people coming from, so the GCCA is in Northbrook, Illinois, which is basically like a northern suburb of Chicago. But we have people coming from very far north of Wisconsin, like up in the almost Door County, Oshkosh area. We've got people coming from Kentucky, Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, so Ohio, Missouri, they Southern Illinois. They come from all over the place, and they just make a day of it. There are people who will go and like, oh yeah, I spent the night on Friday night, and then I'm just here at the hotel, and I do the swap, and I'll drive home later. Hey, you know what? Look at it this way: if you're somebody who's got a lot of tanks, and you've brought your coolers, and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to drive up there. Maybe not spend the night, but if you're going to leave early in the morning, and I'm going to go there because the swap opens at 10 o'clock, I'm going to spend a couple hours there, but I'm probably, if you're going to spend a couple $100 on fish, and those fish at a fish store would have cost you $400 or $500, might be, and you're getting really healthy fish, it might be worth the drive. So, and I think it's something that's only going to grow in 2023. And I think that's especially the case if there are economic challenges. People are going to want to, let's face it, we love keeping fish. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. And that's not something that is just most people like us, fish nerds, just kind of give up. And so we look for better ways to do the fish keeping, look for cheaper ways to do fish keeping. And I'll tell you right now, in terms of livestock, the swaps are by far, that is the way to find fish that are going to be healthy, which it's going to save you money, right? So if you go to somewhere else, you don't get healthy fish, or you get fish, but even if they're cheaper, but they're not healthy, and you start dumping meds in the tank, and you got problems, it wasn't cheap in the long run. So swaps, and then the aquarium shows, right? The things like Aquashella. Yeah. And we're starting to see, what I like is some of these shows are starting to combine. So we had the Triple Crown last year, right, which we didn't get to go to, but it was at the ACA, the American Live Bear Association, and maybe the Killifish, I think. But we're starting to see that combination because I think people are starting to realize, oh my gosh, there's so many shows. I looked at our calendar the other day, and somebody was asking, hey, can you do a talk in, I don't remember the region. And I said, well, let me know when you have dates because my schedule is filling up. I realized, I'm like, you realize there are 33 things that and this is not all the things. These are just the things that we were even contemplating. This includes swaps and stuff, but there were 33 events for 2023 that I had written down in this calendar. I'm like, there's only 52 weeks in the year. We got to figure this thing out. Some of them were doubled up and things like that. But between meetings and swaps and Aquashella type stuff and OCAs and ACAs and all the letters you can possibly think of in combination, there's a lot. And the cool thing for you is most likely there is something going on in your general region sometime this year, whether it's the ACA or the OCA or one of the Aquashella type things or Keystone Clash, or even the AGA. I think that's out west maybe this year.
Is it?
I think so. So a lot of different things going on, a lot of different options. All right, let's take a small, I saw a couple super chats come through. Kevin and Lisa, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Per your first point, I have gotten a betta from KG Tropicals, snails from Flip Aquatics, and an Oscar from the Cichlid Shack. Never had a problem with shipping. See, that's awesome to hear, because it opens up a whole lot of avenues for people who are looking for fish. When you can go on the internet and you can search, and then you can go on, and some of these companies now have been around for a number of years. You're like, okay, I can get a really good feel for, or you go on your Facebook groups, hey, has anybody ever ordered from so-and-so? Oh yeah, they were great. This is what I ordered. And you get more and more of that feedback now. It wasn't like it was even 5 years ago, where it was a thing. It was still something that it had been around for a while, but I just don't think people were as open to it. Where now it's like people don't even think about it. Oh yeah, I got my fish shipped in. Evan, thank you very much for the super chat. Hey J&J, I think that's one of you. Fish question, I just pulled wigglers out from my Madagascar cichlids. I've never hatched, raised eggs, egg layers, only mouth brooders. How do I keep the wigglers alive, newly separated from parents? Well, you're probably best off with those in a bare bottom tank, just so you don't have any detritus or anything like that. If they're large enough, once they go through their egg sac, which should be, if they're Madagascars, usually they're pretty large fry, so you should be able to see when their egg sac is going away, and then you start feeding them live baby brine. Keep the water quality good. Try to keep the detritus down to a minimum. And you don't have to have bare bottom. I mean, in fact, I don't have any bare bottom tanks, so I say that, but I don't do it. So I don't hesitate to throw them in a separate tank and put them on sand, and make sure that there's decent airflow, but nothing that's, or a little bit of surface agitation, maybe a sponge filter, but nothing that's going to suck them up in a filter or really blow them around where they get exhausted and they start dying. So that's what I do. All right, next thing. Some of you are not going to like this next point.
Uh-oh.
But I kind of mentioned this. I already sort of kind of mentioned this, but I think for 2023 African cichlids, I don't think they're going to be ridiculously popular this year.
They're getting the boot.
I love them. Don't get me wrong. And we're always going to have them in the fish room. So don't think for one second that I'm abandoning African cichlids, because the early years of this channel were mostly African cichlids in our fish room. And so we've got the Mbuna tank. We've got a peacock tank. We've got multiple shell dweller tanks. We've got 2 lake Tanganyikan, non-shell dweller lake Tanganyikan tanks. So what else we got? Cypachromis. So we got a number of them, and I have absolutely no desire to get rid of any of them. But I also think from just a what's popular perspective, I don't see the African cichlids being quite as popular as they've been, certainly what they were like 4 or 5 years ago. That's just my belief in the matter.
Sure, things change.
Yeah. Anything you want to, you got over there? I'm in the middle of my stuff.
No, but are you going to talk about like fish tank alternatives? Do you have anything like that?
Fish tank alternatives in 2023? You think there's going to be a trend in something?
Well, yeah, tiny tanks with no fish. Plants. It's all plants, like the super tinies.
Yeah.
I think people are realizing that they're too small for fish, and you can just keep plants in a little tiny tank, and you can get super tiny tanks. Have plants, and it's just a win-win.
We'll see if that's a trend.
I think it is.
Rachel said, yeah, that yes. I think could definitely, that's definitely picking up steam too. I get more people asking about.
Because even at Aquashella, how many booths had those types?
Sure.
Like the UNS booth had little teeny tiny, just with a single plant. Beautiful, showcase your anubias, whatever. Yeah. And then the other booth, I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been related to UNS that had the really tiny little terrariums. So between terrariums and aquariums and paludariums, they're all just merging, mushing up, and becoming great fun stuff.
That's something that I did not previously consider. So I could see that being more popular in 2023 than it's been in the past. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other thing too to consider is, I think what's happening, and I think it's already started to happen, but I think it's going to pick up steam in 2023, and that is when we think about fish tank equipment. I wonder if the blind loyalty to certain brands is going to fade if that brand costs more than other types of equipment that maybe does the same job for the most part. So here, all right, let me be clear. I'm thinking about fish tank filters, hang-on backs, canisters, whether internal, external. They're all kind of doing the same thing. They're pushing water through a compartment that holds media. That media houses beneficial bacteria, and the water is returned to the tank. Now, specifically when it comes to hang-on back filters, there are a lot of filters that do that. Just push water through. They may not be the popular brands, but as long as they are reliable and as long as they're pushing water through, I think a lot of people are starting to realize, wow, you know what? I just see it more in comments now than I used to, especially in the last year or so. And I think it's going to continue. Like, hey, you know what? I'm not ashamed to say I've got the, I don't know, top fin whatever, or the Aqueon. Not that those are bad. Again, we've got an Aqueon filter downstairs, and the thing is one of the easiest filters that I have at just maintaining, because it just runs. It's just a workhorse, and the thing just goes crazy and runs and runs and runs, and I can drain the water all the way down to almost the intake, and it's like, oh, whatever, I'll just keep doing my thing. Where some of the more expensive filters, like, you drained the tank too low, I can't suck up the water no more, I'm going to start making a noise. And then the next thing you know, it's like, it's grinding.
Oh, I hate that sound.
Yep, and you got to pull the plug as fast as you can, which you really should be doing that before you start the water change anyway, but sometimes I forget. So I think with fish tank filters and stuff, you might see a rebound for some of the brands that aren't as popular, like the Seachems, the Aqua Clears, and those ones that people hold in high esteem, when people realize, hey, some of these other filters that aren't quite as expensive, but they're relatively reliable, just go with those because they're just pushing water through. And that could be the same thing with heaters and lights. I've said it a million times. Some of the lights that I've purchased over the last year were the Night Crew and the Higer. There's some of the cheaper lights. Again, long-term reliability is going to be key because they've got a great color spectrum. And as long as they last, as long as the other lights do, they're like half the price. And so, especially if you don't have plants, you don't need to worry about, oh my gosh, I need this super high-end light. If you don't have plants, you just need something that illuminates the tank and makes the fish look cool. So that's, and the other thing too is, just like we talked about with the online retailers, I think there's never been a time in history where people have the ability to go and look at product reviews, whether that's on YouTube or throughout the internet, and just see what people are really saying and get their experience, and then see what's happening long term. Because sometimes when somebody writes a review like, oh yeah, this filter is great, here's why I like it, it's like, well, what's it like in a year? What's it like in 5 years? And when you see the thing still running in somebody's fish room 5 years from now, like, oh yeah, is that still that Marine Land Pro that you did the review on 3 years ago? Yeah, that's still the same one sitting in that tank. Or is that still the Aqua Clear 110 you've gotten at 125? Yeah, it's been there for 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever, and still doing its job, no problems. So I think we're going to see that. Do you have anything else you want to add? So I didn't have any earth-shattering things. These are just things I think are going to happen in 2023.
No, I covered my two.
You had two.
Kind of like the
Okay.
less is more, very simple, minimal, striking, kind of out of the box, different.
Yeah.
And also tiny, no fish.
All right.
There you go. Take that.
Cool. BC, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Good evening. How many 2.5 to 3 inch corridors are too many for a 55 gallon? So you're talking full grown.
You can get a big old pile of Corys in there.
Yeah. What would I do in a 55 if I wanted to do something that was striking, but not something that would be bad? I could see 20. 15 to 20 without even thinking about it. If I'm thinking about like Panda Corys, Adolphi, Venezuela, salt and pepper Corys. Yep. If they were smaller like the Habrosis, easily 20 to 25. And you're doing it the right way, because Panda Corys in a big group, they act very differently than Panda Corys separately or Panda Corys in a small group. And it's been fun to see, because we've got a bunch in the fish room right now. We've got a bunch of Adolphi Corys, and right now I've got them split up into a couple different tanks, 20-gallon tanks, and it's just fun seeing a big group. And they all kind of, they'll go to one area, go to another, and then they'll kind of all spread out. And then when it's time to eat, they're all like, hey man, let's go over to this area over here. And almost all Cory cats act the same way when it comes to that. So definitely start with 15. See if you like it. You can always add more.
Cory party.
Now, that being said, I wouldn't, load my tank up with hundreds of other fish too. So if Cory cats are like, I love Cory cats, they're my favorite thing in the face of the earth. I really, when I build this 55 gallon, that's the most important fish in the aquarium. Then yeah, 15 to 20 all day.
All day.
That's what I would do.
All right, stocking question.
Okay, here we go. Bring them now. Let's go.
All right. Question time. Lady Lycan, can forktail rainbows be kept with clown killies?
I've never kept them together. I don't see why not.
How big do the forktails get?
They're not much. I mean, I guess they're bigger than clown killies, but they're, do
they both stay towards the bottom? Towards the top?
Clown killies would definitely stay really close to the top, and the forktails will be all over the place. They don't have to be towards the top. They'll go mid-water. As part of it, I guess, would depend on what size tank you're dealing with. The larger the tank, obviously, the easier it's going to be.
Floating plants.
I wouldn't do a ton of floating plants because those clown killies are going to want plenty of access to the top of the tank.
Oh, sure. I'm not talking cover it, but give them some little hidey holes.
Let's see here. Lee says, got some Allanite rainbows ordered up from you. See you at the GCCA swap. You're going to like those. Those Allanite rainbows, if you guys have never heard of those before, you can do a little swipe over, Google image the Allanite rainbow. Those fish are absolutely awesome, and they're pretty big. They're closing in on 3 inches, so I would imagine when they get into your tank and get settled in, they're gonna be awesome. I'll tell you what I've been doing too with all the rainbow fish, even these larger ones. We've got Bosemani, we've got the red rainbows, we've got the Allanite. I give them live baby brine, and you would think a fish that's closing on 3 inches, but their mouth is kind of tiny, they just go crazy. Like, wow, they're going absolutely nuts when I give them live baby brine. I give them the Northfin flakes, the Northfin micro pellets. They just go crazy. They are not picky, and it's fun. It's fun watching rainbow fish eat because they kind of at times resemble African cichlids. I remember when I got the Bosemani in, and I think I had like 40 of them, and I just threw in some flake food, and I'm not kidding you, within like 5 seconds, like, phoom, gone. And they're like, yeah, this is crazy. I'm like, let me do that again. Phoom, gone. And they were hungry. Because most of the time when fish are shipping, you really don't want to feed them a lot because you don't want them fouling up the water and creating an ammonia issue. And when they got in, they were like, thank you very much. That's when you know the rainbows are in decent shape, is when you get them in, and then usually within 24 hours, they're going crazy for food.
Toski got a new tank.
Sweet.
75 gallon this
Nice.
past weekend. Congrats. Now, what to do? Oh, there's white clouds in it. What else would go with white clouds? 75 gallon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you've got... Well, first of all, we did a species profile on white cloud, so check that out. That'll be the more lengthy version, because I do a pretty decent, hey, here's some fish that can go with fish when I do a species profile. But any type of Cory cat, all your rasboras are pretty much going to be pretty awesome. Right now, in one of the quarantine tanks, I've got white clouds and green cubitai. That's such a cool mix.
True.
Your smaller tetras, any types of your neons, your ember tetras. If you're looking for some type of like centerpiece fish, you've got in a 75 gallon, pearl gouramis would be really cool.
Oh.
Like I could see like a half a dozen pearl gouramis, 6, 8, 9 of them, 10 of them in a
That would be
75
pretty.
gallon, or honey gouramis. You could do a dwarf gourami, but don't. The honey gouramis, pearl gouramis are the two that I feel comfortable keeping multiples together. But the dwarf gourami, you could do one. A pistogramma would be cool. Rams. Somebody else mentioned keyhole cichlids or curviceps would be pretty awesome. Right now, I've got white clouds. They're spread out throughout the fish. Well, first of all, they're back here. We've got some right here. We've got some in the 75 gallon with the Acthrictes hecali, the albinos. Yeah. Long term, that probably wouldn't work because those would get a little too big and probably eat them. But right now, it's working out just fine. And then we've got them with the green cubitai. But yeah, all your smaller, similar sized fish, cherry barbs would be pretty cool, I think. Yeah, you got a lot of options. So and one of the reasons you might have asked that is because you've heard that they're cooler water, but that is true. But they will also go up into we keep all of our fish at these guys are at 70, probably 76, 77. Downstairs in the fish room, they're at like 78, and our white clouds live a very, very long time at that temperature. So just because a lot of people think with the white clouds, oh, I heard that there are fish that don't need a heater, and therefore they can't, it's not that, oh, they don't need a heater and so they can't withstand warmer temperatures. No, they don't need a heater, but if you keep them at tropical fish temperatures, they do just fine as well.
Now, while we're talking about 75 gallons,
Yeah.
let's I grabbed another one here. This is from Anthony. Any advice for a beginner African cichlid tank for a 75 gallon?
75 gallon, I think all right, so there's two ways you can go. So there's the three main lakes, Lake Malawi, Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika. If you're going to do Lake Malawi, do Mbuna cichlids. I think you're going to have the most enjoyment. I think you're going to have the easiest time managing aggression. So your yellow labs, your rusty cichlids, your Pseudotropheus solosi, Sokolophi, those more mellow types of cichlids, stay away from the Aratus. Female red zebras are really good. They have a nice deep orange. Pseudotropheus acei are really cool as well. But again, stay away from the Aratus, stay away from the Damasceni. When you start looking at some of these cichlids, people start warning you, the bumblebee cichlids, don't do those. But that would be really cool for Lake Malawi. The other option is to do, so for Lake Malawi, I would not do a peacock, not if you're just getting into cichlids, I wouldn't do a peacock tank in a 75 gallon. It works for some people, it worked for me, but if you're just getting into them, it can be a little bit difficult to manage the aggression between males. The Lake Victorians can be kind of mean to one another. I mean, I remember I had a Lake Victorian, a group of obliquitans. I threw them in the 75 gallon and they whooped each other within like 3 days. I had one left. They can definitely be a little bit on the aggressive side. Lake Tanganyika, you've got almost all the options except for frontosa. So if you want to do shell dwellers, you want to do some feather fins at the top, or you want to do cyprichromis, you've got all your rock dwellers like your Lelupi, Transcriptus, Regani, Ornatus. You could do a ton of different fish in a 75 gallon. So you've definitely got some cool options there. So if you don't want to do Mbuna, look at Lake Tanganyikan fish. And we've done a bunch of species profiles on all kinds of different shell dwellers. We did the Ornatus as well. So.
Oh, you know what? Whip had a question.
He did?
Yeah. Hey, Professor, long-time listener, first-time commenter.
Glad you're here.
My sponge filter that is expelling air through the sponge instead of the tube, is it salvageable or do I need to put it down?
It's not the end of the world. I mean, you're still getting water flow through the sponge filter. So at some point you can probably switch it out, but just because it's coming out the top instead of, kind of going back through the uplift tube, it's still bringing water through the sponge. It's probably not doing it as efficiently as it used to. Most likely, I'm assuming that in that tank, you've probably got more than just that one sponge filter anyway. And so if that's the case, I would probably just change it out. But I also wouldn't be in a big hurry to do it. Vibe says, I love Frontosa and Maltese. Frontosa are cool. Yep, yes they are.
Maltese are cute and the best to photograph. Oh my goodness,
yeah,
they are
just kind of sit there and like, hey man.
Oh, their little blue eyes.
I'm going to take the picture. Jasmine says, can the Hillstream loaches be tank mates with honey gourami, pygmies, neon tetra in a 10 gallon? I don't know about the 10. I have never kept them in a 10 gallon. I've always kept them in at least a 20. But in terms of the personalities, yeah, I don't know, depending on how many you want to keep, if you're going to want to do that in a 10. Mario says, what's the best gourami for a 20 long? Also, are guppies good tank mates for gourami? Thank you. They can be. In a 20 long, I'd go one of two. So your safest bet, well, I guess you got three. You got more than three, but of the most common ones, the ones that are going to be easy to find, because I know you like to be like, what about the licorice gourami? And what about the croaking gourami? And all this stuff. I'm like, oh, come on, just stop already. Sparkling gouramis would be pretty cool in a 20, especially if you had, I think in a 20 gallon, you could get away with maybe 6 or so. Honey gouramis would also be cool, and you could keep multiples in a 20 long. You could do a dwarf gourami. In that case, I would only do one. Right? And all of those, I think, would work out okay with guppies. The only thing I would even hesitate about is just a dwarf gourami. Does he start fin nipping the male guppies, the long fins of the male guppies? And also keep in mind, dwarf gouramis will almost assuredly eat any guppy fry. So if you enjoy guppy fry, and you're like, oh, I like this. Look, I've got a tank here that's made little lives. Your dwarf gourami is gonna be like, Yes, they did. And now they're in my belly. Get
Be
into
like-
my belly, little baby guppies.
Or he'll be like, no, I didn't.
Because
no.
in fact, people ask me sometimes, hey, my guppy fry are getting out of control. What can I put in there that's going to eat the fry but leave the adults alone? And usually I say one of the options is a dwarf gourami. And some people be like, oh, that was a great suggestion. Yeah, I don't see any guppy fry anymore. So keep that in mind. If you're worried about that, then definitely the sparkling gourami. Honey gouramis might be better. They still might pick off fry here or there, but they won't be as intent on doing it compared to the dwarf. Other gouramis I would not do. Like, so your blues, your opalines, your golds, I would never put them in a 20, first of all, and they get way too aggressive. Pearl gouramis get way too big. Thick lip gourami might be on the verge of a little bit too assertive. Maybe not. That's a hit or miss one.
Yeah.
What you got? What say you?
Well,
Have you been slacking off at your job?
well, no, I have not. Thanks for asking, though.
Okay.
I'm actually looking for a particular. Oh, that's what I was trying to remember. Okay, Bunny Viper
So-
asked early in the stream, what would we recommend for a neon, green neon, black neon, or I think there was a third option.
All right, so
Green
neons.
neon.
All right, so you got green neons, black neons. You got the diamond heads. You've got the standards, and
Golds.
I kind of throw the golds, and I also the gold's not really neon, but it's neon size, and I also throw the cardinals in there.
Yeah.
Just because they're basically the same as neons, only slightly different color and a little bit more finicky. All right, so you're gonna go greens, I know,
Of course.
because you prefer their look, and they
They're
are.
beautiful. They're like little gemstones.
Yeah, they're good.
Swimming
And by
through
the way,
water.
you are going to be particularly interested in the video on Sunday. That's all I'm going to say. You're definitely going to want to watch the video on Sunday. If I had to pick one, thinking long term, I would go with the black neon, only because it is, to me, the most hardy.
Yeah.
To me, it's the most. It's going to withstand changes in water parameter. Not changes, but it's going to have the widest range of water parameters in terms of pH and water hardness. And I just think they're the healthiest. They're definitely hardy, and if something happens to a tank, like, oh my gosh, I brought some other fish and I got ick, they tend to really to do pretty good. So
Yeah, they're tough little cookies.
yeah, so that would be my guess. I do like the standard neon the way it looks better than the green neons, and the black neons, but I just find them to be so weak. It's frustrating, and it's gotten to the point where I think if you want 10 neons in your tank, you better buy 20. And hopefully you'll have 10 at the end. So they just come in so small, and they're so frail, and they're skinny, and then you go to the pet store and like, oh my gosh. So if you ever go to a pet store and you see nice, plump, healthy neons or cardinal tetras, even if they're a little bit more expensive, trust me, you're probably you have two options. You can buy the skinny, frail, sickly looking ones and buy 20 of them and hope you get 10, or you can buy the ones that are a little bit larger, plump, look healthy, they're swimming great, and just buy 10 and hopefully have, or maybe buy 12 and hopefully have 10. So in the end, the price is going to be similar. Fish fan, 20 gallon long. Thank you so much for the super chat. Bill says hi.
Hey, Daryl.
I have a column, rectangular, 10 gallon. What is an optimal landscape for shrimp in it? I love all your vids. Thank you. You're great. So are you. That's going to be a great tank for shrimp.
Oh.
So it is a column rectangular 10. So it's that taller 10. Shrimp are going to work out just fine. Landscape, aquascape. Thoughts?
I think it would be really fun to do something like in my brain, I call it like a plank of wood. Like it almost looks like a tree trunk that's fallen, and but it's angled. So you get just a really nice kind of, I don't know if that's like a whatever degree that is. What is that? 35
Like a
degree?
45.
40, less
Yeah.
than a 45.
Okay, well, then 35.
Let's go 35 degree. And so you have some rocks, and maybe even you could make like a little thoroughfare by not completely filling in the rocks, but you get a little bit of high, a little bit of low, and then you can plant just kind of around it. I think that would be super fun.
Yeah, and with what I'm envisioning in that tank, if it's a little bit taller than your standard 10, is you want to use that height. And so as you're using that wood, maybe put some Java, shrimp love Java moss. And so if you glue some or tie some Java moss to that, and they will use that entire structure. And so that way they're not just confined to that smaller footprint of that taller 10 gallon. They can use the vertical space, because that is a great idea for a tank like that, because a lot of fish would be like, oh man, I've got to swim up and down, but I can't swim side to side. That's not what I normally do. But the shrimp, they won't care. As long as you've got structure there, but they can climb up and down and swim through and then grab onto something up a little bit taller. That'll be really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
That'll be fun.
All right, hold on. I saw something. We've said that, yeah, it's an FX6, but that's just to keep it seated. It's my own. It's on my flower horn tank, 2 or 3 inches still at 55. Yeah, it's probably, you could probably, if you wanted to switch out that sponge. And here's the other thing too, is sometimes what I'll do is if I really think there's even a chance for a problem, I will switch out the sponge, but then leave the actual sponge kind of tied to the top of the tank, but where the bubbles are coming up from the new sponge, so that that old sponge still gets a little bit of water movement, and not all the beneficial bacteria are going to die. Some will, for sure, because the water's not going through it, but at least the stuff that's closer to the surface will survive, and it will lessen the likelihood that you have a problem. Community Tanks for Life, thank you so much for the super chat. Any plans for a keyhole cichlid species profile? I added some to my 75-gallon community tank, but hard to find info about them. I don't have them in the fish room right now. I used to. I had a big group of them in a 75-gallon. I think so. Those fish went from, if I remember correctly, it's been a few years. I think I started them in a 29, and then I moved them to the 75. And I love those fish. They were very, very peaceful, easy to feed, lived a long time. Really like them. So if I get them again, I will definitely make sure that I put something out on them, because I think it's a fish that I try to mention from time to time, especially when I'm thinking about centerpiece fish and cichlids that are less aggressive, and the keyhole cichlids are right there. Keyhole cichlids, and the other one is the curviceps. It has a little bit more yellow. We've had those in the fish room before that I really liked. But when you're looking at less aggressive cichlids, the keyholes, the curviceps, the epistogramma, the rams, crebensis, those are the ones I usually mention, because they tend to get along in a community tank with your standard community fish. So if I get them back in, I will definitely do that.
Oh,
what?
Dalton says, got a 40 breeders, a late Christmas gift.
Sweet.
Planning on doing a massive school of ember tetras and a small school of otos. What do you think are good numbers for each?
Love it. So with the otos, just make sure that your water is closer to neutral and not crazy hard like our water is, because otos, they just don't even, I don't bring them in, I don't buy them, because at a pH of 8.2 and even at a water hardness of 10 degrees for KH and GH, they just do horribly in our water. So I've stopped bringing them in. But if your water is more conducive to their growth, like closer to neutral, and your GH and KH are, maybe mid, even upper single digits, they would probably be fine. And some of you have probably kept them in water like mine. You're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. It worked out okay. It just never worked out for us. But anyway, that wasn't your question. Your question was how many? In a 40 breeder, embers, you could do 50 ember tetras in a 40 breeder, and I think it would look absolutely amazing. And I would probably do 15 or 20 otos. I mean, these are very small. I mean, they're not very small, but they're small fish. And so some people are like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, you're calculating in my head. You just told them 50 ember tetras or 40 and 20 otos. That's like 60 fish in a 40. That's way too many. No, and then you look at the actual tank, and it's like, no, that
Where are they?
actually wasn't. No, it's not that. I mean, you'll see the ember tetras, but if you put in six, like the typical, you need 6 to 8, you can do that, but it's not going to be very impressive, right? You put in 40, and you're not going to, they're light eaters. Mm-hmm. A 40 breeder is a 3-foot tank. These fish, they're lucky to get an inch, so they're going to have plenty of space. They'll feel comfortable in a big group. You got this nice splash of orange, and then the otos need to be in a group, right? So 15, 20 of those. They're also small. They're going to max out about an inch, inch and a half. That'll be a great tank. Now, if you're loading them up with other fish, then you want to reduce those numbers. But certainly, if I were putting minimums on it, with the embers, probably 10 to 12, and then with the otos, same thing. That would be my suggestion. Brittany says, how often should I feed my 3-month-old Oscar? Oh, that's cool. Your 3-month-old Oscar? So I feed, it doesn't really matter what fish we have. I feed them all twice a day. And I have found that when I do that, it keeps down fish aggression. In tanks where I'm breeding fish, I don't have a lot of fry predation, like, well, unless it's just bound to happen anyway. But like your typical fish, like a lot of your live bears, people always say, oh yeah, I can't keep my guppy fry or my mollies or my platies because they just always get eaten. But I have found that if the adults are decently fed, it cuts down on that. And so I do 2 smaller feedings, one in the morning, one in the evening. And that's how I roll. So I do that in all of our tanks all the time. And I just think it leads to fish that are, if they're well nourished, they're going to be less angry, and in some cases less territorial and less aggressive towards one another.
John Wood is here. Hey, John.
What's up?
You have a good question, John. Just thought I'd ask. I bought a larger can of brine shrimp eggs, keeping in the freezer. What is the shelf life?
So in the freezer, I'm pretty sure like the 1 pound stuff that I think I talked about this last week or the week before that I get from Brine Shrimp Direct. Now I just buy it off of Amazon because it's there, but it is live, or Brine Shrimp Direct that's actually shipping it and selling it. I'm sure of that. We probably keep that stuff in the freezer for a can, maybe. I mean, sometimes I'll buy 2 cans. I might have a can in there for almost a year, and I still get great hatch rates in the freezer. So, yeah, you got some time. So, like, I'm pretty sure last time I bought 2, the second one was in there. No, it probably wasn't a year. Maybe it was like 8 months. Anthony, does 24 Mbuna sound good in a 75 gallon, 6 yellow labs, 6 red zebras, 6 ACI, 6 rusties, 1 to 5 male to female ratio? Number sounds good. Cut down on the ACI. You're going to find that those things get really big, especially the males. And you could up the group of either your yellow labs, your red zebras, or your rusties. But the ACI are probably one of those, and the bumblebees are really large Mbuna. And my male ACI was, when I've had them, probably 7 inches, and it was considerably bigger than the other fish. And so doing 6, you're only going to have 1 male, so maybe it'll be okay. But I might cut down to like maybe a male and 3 or 4 females on that one. And then you can either up the rusties, up the yellow labs, or if you wanted to do something that was blue, you could go with the Pseudotropheus solosi, because in that case, your males will be blue, your females will be yellow. So you could try that.
From Leonard's Infinite Studios, great question. With tiger barbs, the green tiger barbs, can you keep them with African cichlids?
People have. The purists will definitely frown upon it and say, well, that's African cichlids, and now you're keeping fish from a different continent. A lot of people have done it. I've done it in the past. It worked out almost flawlessly. So you're still going to want to keep your green tiger barbs in a big group because they'll kill each other, right? But what I have found with fish like that, so that combination you're talking about, so let's say I've got Mbuna or peacocks, and I've done this with the tiger barbs. I did it in a 150. I've done it in a 75 gallon. They completely ignored one another. I mean, they did not interact with one another at all. Even though the cichlids would vie for certain territories with one another, they ignored. It was like, well, they're not a cichlid, so I'm not even going to bother with them. And the tiger barbs were like, those are cichlids. If I bother them, they might hurt me. So it always worked. Now, if your water parameters are conducive to both, but yeah, I mean, I know some people are going to be like, I can't believe you said that. Sorry, I've done it multiple times. And I've known a lot of people who've done it. They use the tiger barbs kind of as like dither fish, even for the South and Central Americans. It works out great.
Well, regarding cichlids, the one tank at the Chicago 22, Aquashella, Jeff had green tiger barbs with cribs.
Yeah, that's true. Which are technically, they are African cichlids. They're West Africans, but I'm just assuming he was talking about Mbuna and peacocks, which again, whatever. I think it'll work just fine. Just keep the tiger barbs in a big group. Now, it might not work so great if it's like, I did this in maybe wouldn't work as good in like a 40 gallon breeder or something, but if you've got a 4 to 6 foot tank, probably work out okay. Let's see here. Hold on, this is coming out really small. Why can't I? Hold on. I'm going to try to read this. Don't judge me, bro, because I can't see.
Glasses.
I know. I'm squinting, Jerry. Look, there's a dime over there on the floor. Hold on. Let me look on my other screen. Equatino 174. Just phonetically spelled. Tell me I'm an idiot. We wouldn't be the first person. I can't see. I'm doing the best I can. But thank you. Thank you for being a member the last 14 months.
Yeah, that's a long
About
time.
to set up a 29-gallon tank and was thinking about Apistos. Cool. Was it your opinion on 1 male and 2 females? Just do a pair. If you're going to do Apistos and maybe you're thinking about, hey, it'd be kind of cool if they breed because you're going to get, you're getting both sexes anyway. I would just do a pair. And hopefully it works out. Sometimes the male won't accept the female, but when you do the one in a 29, if you do the 1 male to 2 females, inevitably what's going to happen is if and when you do get a pair form, that other Apistos is probably going to be pushed to the side of the tank, and they're not going to appreciate her, especially if they start to breed, anywhere near them. And sometimes the females will start fighting too. So just do a pair, and it will be cool. I hope. Let's see here. Leonard says, Seinfeld, great show. Love it. Yeah, I've got more Seinfeld quotes memorized in my brain than I care to admit. Vibe says, red paradise fish in a community tank.
Oh, that would be pretty. I mean, red paradise fish.
I haven't kept paradise fish in a really long time. So a lot of them behave kind of sort of like a semi-aggressive betta sometimes, or maybe even a larger gourami. I don't know. Someone who's kept them a little bit longer, pipe in to Vibe's question, but I kind of hesitate. But at the same time, I think I guess it would depend on the size of the tank. If I've got a 29 or larger, I'd feel more comfortable with it than if it was a smaller, like a standard 20. Yeah. Rich says, can you keep Apistos with German blue rams? If you've got a large enough tank, I'd probably prefer to have at least a 3-foot tank, like a 40 breeder or some type of 3-foot tank to keep those together, just to give them their own space, because they are cichlids, and cichlids do weird things. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm dealing with, and you don't know this, you're hearing this for the first time too, in the 150, again, some of you are going to freak out about this because some people freak out when they see the tank, but it's been this way for a million years. I've got the Geophagus altifrons, big giant fish. He's probably 9 inches. There's a frontosa in there, also getting quite large, and he's also about the same size. Now, their frontosa are slow growers, but he's finally caught up to the Geophagus. These fish have gotten along for many years. I mean, if you go back into the older fish room tours, they've been together for a very long time, and they've always just kind of done their own thing. Well, I came downstairs the other day, and they were lip locked. Never seen that between the two of them before. They were lip locked, and they were whipping each other around the tank.
No kidding.
And now I've kept a close eye on them the last few days, and they're fine. They're leaving each other alone again, but I don't know what set them off. And it's one of those things where with cichlids, I always tell people whenever they ask me, will this cichlid get along with this cichlid? And I'm like, I've done it. Yes, I've known people who have done it, and I've done it, and yes, it's gotten along. But they're always cichlids. You never know what's going on in their little pea brains. I don't know sometimes. Like, I don't know why they got angry with one another. I have no idea. Because they've been fine for many years, and all of a sudden they were like they had each other, and they were like mouth to mouth, and I'm like, this is not good. I was getting ready to remove the frontosa, and then they stopped. And I watched them for a while, and they seemed to leave each other alone. I went down there. I've been going down there, a few times a day, and I'll look at them, and they're fine. But to answer your question, then with the Apistos and the German rams, they're cichlids, and so they do like to have territory. If I'm doing it, I want a 3-foot tank and a 20 long or 29. Could it work? Maybe, but sometimes it doesn't. And I personally probably wouldn't take the chance. Nanners, thank you for being a member the last 10 months. Appreciate that. Hit the fish, my wife and I.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Fernfish.
Don't judge me. Can't see tonight. I know what my problem is. Hi. I was like, hit the fish, my wife. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense, man. Hi, how you doing? I knew what it said. Just checking you. The fish my wife and I got from you are awesome and all alive. What makes a fish a cichlid, and why aren't there any outside Africa or the Americas? Well, all right.
It's a fun question.
First of all, there are cichlids outside of the Americas and Africa because there are actually, you've got the red chromides, which kind of make their way up past North Africa into the Middle East. Madagascar, which is technically its own thing. It's Madagascar cichlids. Let's see, where else do we have? I don't know if there's any in Europe. Too cold. But yeah, so what makes a cichlid? Well, one of it's their jaw structure and the structure of their teeth, and pretty much that. I mean, that's one of the main things. And so I read a book. I had a book that I read. This has to be like 10 years ago. And it was really cool because it outlined all the skeletal features of the cichlids. A big part of it was their jaw structure. They are thought to be most closely related to some of the saltwater fish that come out of the Pacific, but that's one of the main things. But practically speaking, for us fish keepers, the reason why cichlids are, I think people like them so much is one, the personality. They just, for whatever reason, they seem to know what's going on, right? Interact with their owners a little bit more. So they're more personable, and a lot of them, especially a lot of the African cichlids from Lake Malawi, have a lot of color. All right, yeah, and I shouldn't say that because South and Central American cichlids also have some seriously cool color. I mean, look at the Geophagus.
Shannon and Ryan say that there's nothing wrong with getting readers.
Oh, I've got them. There's a couple pairs
He
downstairs
does.
and a
He
pair
has them
in the
everywhere.
bedroom.
You should wear them.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to continue to get everybody's names wrong, misread the things.
Sometimes I look over, I glance, and he's wearing, and he's reading, and you look kind of like Santa.
Hey.
I didn't say there's anything wrong with that. That's pretty cool, because Christmas is my favorite holiday.
Yeah, well, it's not cool in June or something. Like, look at that guy trying to look like Santa. Fish Scott says, what is a good tank size for pea puffers?
Pea puffers are so fun.
If you want to keep multiples, I'd go with a 20 long.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe do a male and 4 or 5 females.
Mm-hmm.
And a 20 long. That'd be pretty cool. You probably get away with a couple males and a 20 long. And then give them like 3 or 5 females each. That might be cool. JT says, looking at setting up a nano 14-gallon black water tank. Any tips? Stocking ideas. Trying to do all research first. Well, first of all, it's going to be a cool tank. That's another thing that I think is going to be even more popular in 2023 are the black water / botanical type tanks, because that's been coming on pretty strong the last couple of years too. So what would I do? What would you do in a black water tank that size, 14-gallon? The nice thing is you open yourself up to the tetras, small tetras like your embers. You've got most of your rasboras, which are pretty cool. So here's what I would do. You ready? This is what I would do. If I were doing a black water tank,
okay, go ahead.
In a 14-gallon, I would do lamp eye rasboras, a school of them of about 15.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
Okay. I would do obviously spiderwood and botanicals, and I would do sparkling gourami.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Bam.
Yep. We could do both. We could combine that because the sparkling gouramis and the lamp eyes are really gonna, when you see them, they're really gonna shine. The other thing I might consider too is some shrimp. And depending on your pH and water hardness, if it's a little bit lower and you're doing black water anyway, go with the Caridina, you could get some pretty cool shrimp.
That would be
because the
fun.
lamp eyes will leave them alone. Sparkling gouramis will leave the adults alone for sure. Well, I shouldn't say for sure, but they usually do.
For sure.
Lynn, Lynn, you've got pea puffers. Says, I have a dozen pea puffers and a lightly planted, heavily scaped 20 long, over a year old and none lost. That's right. You've got a nice pea puffer thing. Very cool.
Is it? And you said it's heavily planted, correct? You said it's lightly planted. Oh, heavily hardscaped.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Ring says 2,000 people through the door at Quad City Swap last weekend. That's
Oh
what I
my
love to hear. And again,
goodness.
that kind of goes to
Whew.
what I was saying before when we talked at the beginning of the thing about, trends for 2023. That's, I'm sure, probably close to a record. I know GCC at one point right before COVID almost, I think they were close to 1,000, which was close to a record for us. And we can see it. It's climbing pretty much every swap.
You know what also would be really cool in that 14-gallon
What?
black water? Green neons. There you go, TB. You're right. I should have said it. They go great in any tank.
Yeah.
If it's big enough for them, put them in. Thanks for correcting me, because you were right.
Sometimes, first I corrected them.
Oh,
First
no.
I corrected her, and then I corrected them. Perhaps they needed talking to. Perhaps something more. Movie.
But you didn't roll your R's. Technically, he rolls his R's.
Okay, well,
I
whatever.
corrected them. Anyways.
We gotta see if anybody gets the movie.
Wait, there's an interesting question here. Okay, this is from Phil. I've recently planted some moneywort in my aquarium. Now it looks like I have some mold type something coming out of the substrate. Is this normal? It was fine before the plants.
Is it a new tank? All right, so hold on. If it's a new tank, that can happen, especially if you use any type of planted substrate. But the second thing, that weird sort of almost like a foggy mold that will sometimes congregate around an area of the tank. If that is an area where there is very little to no flow, that could be why. And the minute you get a little bit of water flow there, it will go away, never to return again.
Oh.
The other thing is, if you have any wood in that tank, sometimes some of that slime will remove itself from the wood, like if it's new driftwood, and wind up as part of your substrate for a little while until it gets sucked up by the filter.
But the only change that I can see was planting moneywort. So I wonder if that blocked it. Maybe
Blocked
kind
some
of
of the flow,
it
maybe?
blocked the.
Yeah.
Maybe I would probably scoop it out, rinse it off, and
And
try
if you
again.
can gravel back that stuff out of there, see if it comes back or not.
Or even float it for a while.
Yep.
Float the moneywort for a while.
Jacqueline the Shining. Yep. Bob got it too. All right, we got a couple people there. Yeah.
Oh.
I saw that movie. My parents let me watch that movie when I was like, I don't know, when did that movie come out?
Oh.
It came out on cable not that long after. I was less than 10 years old, and I remember just sitting there like on the couch. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. I'm sitting there on the couch. Did they even realize like you got a little kid sitting there watching the same thing you're watching? And I remember like I could not sleep in my room. I'm not kidding you, for probably 2 months after that. And
Is that right?
no,
That is not
that
right.
was messed up.
No.
That was seriously messed up, man.
No.
That will definitely. Let's see here.
Oh. Wait, are you ready?
Yeah,
Can I?
sure.
While you're poking around. All right. This is from Alan. I have a 20-gallon with 10 chilies, 6 pygmy quarries, and can they have a betta as a roommate?
Chili. Be careful with the betta and the chilies. The chilies are so
Might be a little
small.
snack size.
A full-grown betta may at times decide, let me see if I can eat that. Not always. I'm sure people have kept them together before. It's just they're really, really small fish. And I would worry a little bit that my betta would be just getting some expensive fish food sometimes.
And they're not really all that fast. They're not really zooming all around the tank
Yeah.
that I've seen.
Yeah. Chris says Colombian tetras would be so cool in a black water tank. Yes, they would. Maybe not for a 14, but definitely would be very cool. Colombian tetras, and so would the Congo tetras. Be very cool. You're absolutely right. Planted Goldies, thoughts on Congo spotted puffer? I love mine. I have no thoughts. I've never kept one. They're cool when I see them on TV. That's for sure.
Mike, yes, you've done a species profile on the pea puffers.
Yes. Yep. It's out there somewhere. Kevin says that he has lamp-eye raspberries in a 33 long black water tank. Stunning. Good pick. Well, thank you. I am glad that somebody who's actually doing it approves and is enjoying their choice.
And remember, in my 12 long, I had the sparkling gourami and the lamp eyes together.
Right. And you did at one point when you first set that tank up, it did get pretty dark. Maybe that's why that popped into my brain.
Maybe.
Maybe I was just thinking back subconsciously to that tank.
For sure.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, that didn't stay black water for very long. Joe says YouTube needs to allow pictures to be shared. You know what? It's not so much YouTube. It is the program that we use. We just don't use a very good program for live streaming. If I had a better live stream program, which is probably something I'm going to look into in 2022, I could flash pictures up on the screen, which would make everybody's life more enjoyable when it comes to, hey, we're talking about this fish, this is cool, and then you're trying to Google it on your own, like, what did he say? Astabalakam. Stop using scientific names, man. I'm trying to look this stuff up.
Sure.
That's a fish. Astabalakala.
No kidding.
Spell it. Can you spell that? Somebody spell it.
Desert Fish says you should go get some cheaters before you put your shoes on the wrong feet.
Yeah, but at least I don't get very far if that were to happen. I can see shoes, okay. It's just sometimes words. And I still have yet to actually do the like enlargement of the chat thing. Like if I could figure that out, it would be a lot better.
Some large font stuff.
Somebody once said, hey, just hit the control something something and the font will enlarge. The only problem with that is I hit the control something something in the middle of the live stream. I'm worried that like, oh, just crash the live stream. That's great. It never works again. Yep. You got to spell it, Vibes. I don't even remember what I said. That's going to be really hard for you. Judy says, 20-gallon with hardscape and heavily planted. No fish yet set up since Mother's Day. Mother's Day was a long time ago.
Wow.
Thinking of black skirts, how many and what tank mates are good? Skip the black skirts. I know, I'm crushing your dreams. You've had this tank set up forever. I'm like, no. Black skirts get big. They're one of the bigger tetras out there. They're going to get, so when I did the black skirt tetra species profile, I filmed them in a 3,000 gallon. Obviously, not many people can keep them in a tank that large, but because they were in a tank that large, they achieved their full growth potential of every bit the close to 3 inches that you would expect a full-grown black skirt tetra to get, and they were also very bulbous, very plump and tall, and they can be somewhat fin nippy. So you combine all that together, you might be better off. So if I were doing a 20-gallon, they're still fin nippy, like the black skirts, but look at the black phantom tetra. They're gonna give you way more color. They've got this crazy awesome high dorsal fin, but they're also going to give you not only that silvery black color, but they're going to give you some purple, and it's going to be cool. And they also have red phantom tetras, which are more of a red tint to them.
Pretty.
Also pretty awesome. Check those out and see if maybe those, and if I were doing those, then you could probably do 6 or 8 and a 20, and then a lot of your other types of tetras get along a little bit better. It'd be pretty cool.
Tom's here, Grown Clip Bonsai for
What's
seniors.
up?
Hey, Tom. Now, Whip, be careful with your phone, okay? Remember when Whip dropped his phone?
Oh, right,
and
yeah.
He grabbed
Poor
it.
Tom's been scarred ever since. Yeah.
And it
Poor guy got locked out of the
him.
stream. I had to go back in through all the blocked.
Everybody's
people
trying to get him back in. Poor.
We got him back though.
And Whip's phone did not break, so you know what?
That's good.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It all worked out in the end.
Naz says, let's see, wait. Oh, hi from Melbourne,
Hey.
Australia. Hey, cool.
Is it yesterday, today, or tomorrow there?
It's tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
I think so.
Yeah, because when it comes to the New Year's thing, they always do
it's really early.
Australia first. So it's tomorrow there.
And it's summer.
Or is it tomorrow yet? Yeah, it'd be tomorrow by now.
And it's summer.
Oh, that's true too, because the Earth
It-
is
Yeah.
flipped its tilt.
So, says maybe you should do a scape in a vintage TV, just like your logo. You know what? I always have and always will want to do that.
Well,
at
why
some
maybe
point.
don't you just do it?
Because I'd have to go start scouring the
You're there anyway,
thrifty.
right?
I know that's true. Well, I haven't been in a long time. No time, but at
That's
some
probably
point.
a good thing. You come home
Kinda
with
is.
everything but the vintage TV we need to
Yeah.
make a fish tank out of.
Yeah, but yeah, that's so many ideas stuck
Yep.
up here, but yes.
Mike
Thanks
says,
for-
I think, sorry.
No, you're good.
All right.
Continue.
Mike says, I think 2023 will see more people doing tanks like the one behind you with multiple sections. I know it will be my next one. This is actually 4 different tanks. We just kind of slammed them all together, but I agree because they've got tank dividers and it can make it more interesting. We've got friends that belong to GCCA and Greenwater, and they'll take 40 longs or 33 longs or 55s, put in a couple 2-tree dividers, usually 2, and then they house different fish in those little areas. And it's kind of nice because they have either a sump system that's taking care of a whole section, or they've got a canister where you've got return on one end and then the intake on the other. And it gets decent water flow as long as you've got holes in all the separated parts. Dividers, that's the word I was looking for. The separated parts. The separators are...
Sparky Will 57, I got a pea puffer and it's not eating. What should I do? Well, pea puffers don't eat flake food. I don't know if that's what you're trying to eat. They do eat live foods. They do like snails. So if you have any pest snails, squish them up and throw it in there. They'll love you. Baby brine shrimp.
Live baby brine, yep. You could try cutting up some bloodworms. Some pea puffers will take the bloodworms. The one thing that they will eat is clams on a half shell. But if you've only got one, you're going to put that big thing in. It's going to be a total waste of money.
Yeah.
But if you got a bunch, the clams on a half shell, I've seen hundreds of pea puffers just be like, oh, and polish that bad boy off and leave nothing on that shell.
But yeah,
you're right.
Live food.
And then sometimes with the, like what you had to do with your pea puffers, you had to pre-crack the shells.
Yes.
Like they wouldn't do that on their own.
Right.
Hers wouldn't.
No,
So-
I would leave snails in there and they would not take care of it. But wait, I have bladder snailed and I have frozen brine.
Frozen brine, I don't remember them ever eating the frozen brine, but the
No.
snails, maybe pre-crush them and see if that'll work. If not, then there could be something wrong, unfortunately, with the pea puffer. Maybe
Although,
that's some kind of internal thing going
remember
on.
they would never eat the other kind of snails.
The Malaysian trumpet snails, they wouldn't touch them.
Nope. So
Yeah.
pest
It's one of the
snails.
things about Malaysian trumpet snails. It'll be Malaysian trumpet snails and cockroaches. If there's ever a major
Pretty much.
catastrophe on Earth, like, I don't know, like
Gross.
the moon crashes into the Earth gets sucked into the sun, or everything gets sucked into a black hole, there will be some form of Earth where it'll just be Malaysian trumpet snails and cockroaches. They will crossbreed, they'll hybridize, and you'll get these big cockroaches with giant shells on their backs that only swim in water. Or not, because Malaysian trumpet snails don't seem to care where they go.
Next question. Let's find something else.
It's going to happen. That's what happens when you watch The Shining when you're like 9 years old. You think of stuff like that.
Cheryl says, I love that vintage TV take idea to go with the channel. Now, the
See?
question is, all right, say I do escape in a TV. So the old vintage TVs, if you got a really big one, it would be what, like this big?
Yeah.
Do you think...
it's got to be huge. It's got to be the one with the wood and the box and everything. It's got to be a
Yeah,
big
but the actual
27-inch
screen.
one.
But the actual screen
It's
is
like-
not going to be that
No,
big.
yes, it will.
Just hear me out. It's not going to be like super huge like these days. You can get a ginormous TV. All right. So just for a picture, do you think King George would agree to just go in there just so I can get a picture of him in the tank?
Yeah. He'd go in. As long as he doesn't get killed by the frontosa. Yeah. So, yes. However, I do think if we're going to do that, it would be really cool to put like an A-Team truck in there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and then like get the guys, because I had all the A-Team action figures. I mean, I had them all. I had
I
B.A.
didn't have
Baracus, I had
any.
Hannibal, I had...
Yeah, and you had
I
the truck?
Face. I had of course I had... What's the point of having the action figures if you don't have the truck?
Yeah.
Who would want that? But I remember because the A-Team action figures, they actually had squishy heads. Like their heads were like squishy ones, but their bodies are hard plastic.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't think their elbows were. I think they were more the stiff ones, kind of like the Star Wars figures, but maybe not. I don't remember. No, they would have had to have been bendable knees because I remember putting them in the A-Team van.
Well, yeah. They'd have to sit
Yeah.
down
So,
and jump out.
yeah. Megan says, what do you think about using Oranda goldfish as research subjects? I think you would be better off using just the feeder goldfish. It's going to be way, unless there's something specific that you're trying to do with the Orandas, but I would just use the feeders, the common goldfish, because it's going to be easier to standardize in terms of size. It's going to be easier to measure growth rates. It's going to be easier. The problem with the Orandas, too, is what if they start running into health problems as they grow, right? And so now you've got to try to rule that variable out, where the commons, once you get them established and you have a healthy group, it's going to be a lot easier to use those. That's what I would do.
Rocky's Pond, what would you stock in a 5-gallon shallow tank? What fish or plants? Oh, gosh. Fish, I would say betta.
In a shallow tank? It depends on how shallow, because what you
Well,
don't want
if
is...
it's a 5-gallon.
Yeah, but if it's a 5-gallon shallow tank, it's probably going to be a cube. It's probably only going to be, 4 inches tall? Maybe? So if it's only 4 inches tall, I would worry, especially a male betta would be dragging their fins along the substrate all the time. So if I was going to put a betta in there, I would only put a female,
Wonder what are the dimensions? Do you think it's really only going to be a 15 or a 5 gallon would
the
only be
standard
4
fives
inches?
I don't even think they're a foot tall. I think they might only be 10 inches tall. And if you're talking about a shallow one, yeah, I think 4 or 5 inches. So I wouldn't
Really?
put a male bed in there. Maybe a female, but yeah, I guess it depends on how shallow that tank is.
Okay. Well, Hedrator formosa, for sure.
Yeah, shrimp
Shrimp.
would be another possibility, and maybe like the dwarf or mira or chili rasbora. That'd probably be the extent of what I would not put the betta with any of those things, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. But if I was going to do a betta in a tank like that, it would definitely be a female.
And then what plants?
Nubius nana petite.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking shallow, right? Unless if it's an open top and you want the anubias to grow out of the top, that can be cool. I mean, do we have that? No,
Not now.
It's not happening now.
No, what you need to do if you are going to do that, put the anubias underwater and let the leaves that generate grow out of the water. Don't just take an anubias and put it out of the water. It won't work so well.
Yeah.
Micro sword, if you want to have that, it's towards the anywhere. If it's going to be shallow, it will survive outside. It'll grow outside the water. That looks super cool. If you're going to do some sort of like a little, what would you call that? Like a shore kind of scape. That would look really cool.
Yeah.
Or an island, yeah. What else? Buse. Buse will stay nice and small for you.
And then also keep in mind the semi-aquatic plants that, like, you go to a Petco or PetSmart and they usually have them in the tubes.
Yeah.
And you've got fully aquatic and semi-aquatic. You can just have those plants growing out of the top. That'd be kind of interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, Tyler's got a good one. Recommendations for a cleanup crew in an Oscar silver dollar. How did you get a silver dollar planted tank, first of all? Because that in and of itself,
That's impressive.
we need to pause and say, well done. Because there has never been anything green that I have put with silver dollars that they haven't absolutely almost instantly said, thanks for that salad, kiss it goodbye.
Yeah.
I mean, even the stuff that's like, so hornwort, any kind of duckweed floating plant, anubias.
I know, anubias.
They were just,
yeah.
yeah.
That was gone
It
right
was
away.
so, all right, so I had to get beyond that. Well, Oscars too, they usually tear stuff up. But anyway, cleanup crew for the Oscars and the silver dollars. It depends on the size of the tank. I'm assuming that it's a big tank. So you've got, let's see here. I have kept Oscars with bristlenose plecos. You just want to make sure there's not a big size discrepancy where the Oscar's like, hey, thanks for the fish food. But a full-grown male bristlenose Oscars, they've never attacked full-grown male bristlenose plecos. So that would be like my algae situation where that's how I would take care of that. And you could put, I don't know, put a half dozen. If it's a really big tank, you could put a dozen of them in there. I think in our 150, we've got 10 or 12 bristlenose. Generally only come out when it's feeding time, but tank is always clean. If you're looking for bottom feeders, you've got the Raphael cat is a really good option. I really love them. They pretty much are like fish vacuums. They eat just about everything. And then when they're really hungry, they will compete with just about any fish for food, and they are not shy. Our Raphael cat gets right in there with everybody else, like, this is mine. So the Raphael cats are good. Pictus cats, I think, with that combination would be acceptable. If your water parameters are conducive to Synodontis, I know they come from a different continent, a different lake. Don't care. Kept them together. It was fine for many years. So the Synodontis cats are really cool. They get not the dwarf Petricola, but some of the larger ones. What else? Loaches. If you've got sizable loaches, again, just make sure you don't have a size discrepancy, but your clown loaches would certainly get big enough. A lot of the Syncrosis species of loach would get large enough. So that could work too.
Amanda asks, when putting small slits in anubias to encourage new growth off the rhizome, how long does it usually take to sprout? Yeah, so when I did the video of propagating anubias, I suggested that you can make little tiny slits on the side of the rhizome, and that will encourage new leaves to grow off from there. It works very well. Well, anubias is a very slow grower, so generally speaking, you're talking about 2 to 3 weeks to grow a little leaf. So I would say it's probably right around there, at least 3 weeks to start having something generate out of that. It's not a quick show.
Whip says, hey, Sunday he's going to bother you so that you can find some locally grown hardy plants with already big, well-established roots.
Oh,
So,
well.
cool, man.
Cool.
Where's Oink? I don't know, but Oink, if you ever watch on the replay,
I
you were
know.
missed.
Yeah. We miss you,
Where you
Wink.
at? Kayleen says, I just visited Fish Planet. Awesome store. Have you guys got a chance to check out Zuze and Elgin? So, totally agree with you because we did the Fish Planet tour. Very much enjoyed that wonderful pet store, fish store. Zuze, we haven't been there, but when we went to SR, I don't know how they say it. Aquaristique. I believe that is their store, right? And they were just talking about it. I don't think when we were there, it was either just opening or it's new. We got to get there because you're now probably the third person that said go there. And unlike the 7,000 people that said go to Fish Planet over the last few years, and we went there once and it was closed, and then we just like but we just didn't get a chance to go back. And everybody was like, you gotta go there, you gotta go there. And we finally did. We're like, we should have gone here a long time ago. It won't take us nearly as long to get to I think that's how you say it, right? Is it Zuze? I think maybe, or am I just making that up? I thought that's how I heard them pronounce it. Do you remember?
That sounds about right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sounds about right. Could be completely wrong.
Yeah, but there are fish that I want so bad at Fish Planet.
Yeah, the problem was we had
No taste.
I did the short today on that betta, which I thought was totally cool. People were like, did you get it? Like, we literally had every single tank in our fish room, every quarantine tank, every grow out tank is packed with fish. And you know me, I will not, even a betta, I am not putting that fish in an established tank because, oh boy, if something goes wrong, we've got a really big problem because the way that we do tanks, the gravel vacs are kind of sort of specific to certain sections of the fish room. So if something goes wrong in that tank and we have a problem, it now spreads to an established section of the fish room, and that would be an absolute nightmare. So no, we didn't get any fish, unfortunately. But when we get open tanks, it will happen, hopefully, someday. Larry says, any issues for cichlids with city tap water that is really high KH and very low GH? Not really. You can always raise your GH if you want to. There's GH boosters, but as long as your KH is up there, I think that's definitely more important. As long as your pH, if you're dealing with African cichlids now, because you didn't say what type, right? Just for cichlids. If it's the South and Central American, like if you got a Pistos or Rams or something, you got a high KH and a high pH, they're not going to like that. But if you're dealing with African cichlids, you got the high KH, which usually means you have a pH that's approaching 8, then you're in good shape, probably. Yeah, you said the Africans. Yep. Leslie, my 55 has 2 silver dollars, an electric blue car, 3 yo-yo loaches, 5 cories. Do I have room for 6 roseline sharks? Saw some at my local fish store Monday and can't stop thinking about them. Those are amazing fish. So it's a 55. Yeah, for sure. Do it. It's going to be awesome. And you will love the roseline, otherwise known as the Denison barb. You're going to love those fish. Those are really, really cool. I brought them in, a few swaps ago? They were great. Great color.
Yeah.
I will do 1 or 2 more questions. We're getting close. My gosh, this is like one of the fastest 90 minutes of our lives. What? You going to say something?
Yeah.
You have something?
Jacqueline has a question.
Okay.
For me. How do you choose plants for your scapes? I seem to have trouble deciding. Well, then you are exactly like me because I have trouble deciding pretty much everything in my entire life. Am I a fast decider?
No, and I am. And
He
so
is very fast and I am not. Even
that
if
can
I
be
decide something.
exceedingly frustrating for someone who makes a decision, who has options, makes a decision, and then does it.
Yep.
Because I feel like if I make the decision and I feel like it's a good one, even if it's not perfect, it's better than what it was before, I'm satisfied. I can always make it even better later. Not so with my wonderful wife.
So sometimes I'll make a fast decision, but then I will change it and change it and change it. But to answer your question, how I decide for plants, it depends what I have. I usually go with that. I may not, and depending on the size of the tank, if it's a scape or if I feel that a lot of plants are needed for either the fish or just for a certain look, I will probably be somewhat limited as to what I can use. And also I may feel like planting or attaching. Maybe I run on a super glue, so then maybe I just don't use attaching plants. Or depends on the light that we have on here. Like if I the light that's on here, I think it's way too bright for the Anubias.
I can turn it down.
Well, then you should turn it down.
Well, maybe I will.
So it can also depend on the light that you have. The other thing is the feel. Do you want a specific feel? Do you want it to be kind of really cozy? Do you want it to look like a certain kind of biotope? And that would help determine. So if, for example, if I use Jungle Val, that's got a totally different, it's almost like a beachy sort of feel, versus Anubias, like smaller Anubias Nana Petite and smaller rocks, that's more of like a cozy kind of a little jungle or a little woodland to me in my brain. So that, and if you want like fine texture or also like a larger texture and speed of growth too. So if you're looking at a smaller tank and you don't want a lot of maintenance, then don't do plants like Val, even corkscrew Val, that's going to be popping up and you're going to have to take some out. You may want to go with slower growers. So I don't know if that helps, but good luck.
That helped me.
Deciding.
All right, we'll do one more here. Got one. K-Ming says, maybe I missed your response. No, I don't think so. Are you planning to try a Satanaperca or a Troculus this year? Yes, especially the Satanaperca. I like those because, I like the Geophagus. I like that look. So there's a very high likelihood that one or both of those fish will wind up in the fish room. So, all right, everybody. I think we're going to call it an evening because it's about that time. It was, like I said, it was a fast 90 minutes because you guys, when you bring the questions,
great
love
questions.
it. If we didn't get to your questions, sorry. We don't ever try to ignore anybody or skip anybody. We answer them as we see them. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you for everybody with the super chats and everything. Always very much appreciated. And to all of our moderators, Dave and Whip and Lynn, thank you for being here. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody, but really appreciate it. We're going to be back. Same time, same place, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time next Wednesday. Bring your questions, have them written down, ready to go, and we will try to answer as many as we can. So thank you, and have a great rest of the week.
See ya.